Everybody happy?
Yes.
Have a good dinner?
Yes.
Get enough?
What's that?
Did you get enough?
Yes. Well, for some of us, for most of us, I guess, this is a continuation of a weekend full of learning and community building and loving and music, and it's just been wonderful. This is a day and a half in. We still have tomorrow. And then for some of us, this is a brand new event tonight, including guests who have come. Thank you for coming, guys. As well as our honored guest tonight who will be a part of the panel. But I wanted to let you know that the purpose of this Baha'i Weekend Retreat has been to address various forms of prejudice, especially those of race, gender, and religion, and how, when the rubber hits the road, we can really make some kind of proactive change in the world. How we do that is to kind of work towards a unity of thought and find techniques and tools that we can bring to our own families and to our own communities. The overarching theme of this weekend has been love thy neighbor. So the committee very wisely decided to invite our neighbors to be a part of this conversation. The Baha'i beliefs at the core value unity. We believe in one God, one humanity, and that all religions stem from the same source. Our writings say, so powerful is the light of unity that it can illuminate the whole earth. So we have these honored guests with us, leaders of our different religious groups in the community, and each of them have in some way participated in building bridges, in working with interfaith in the past, and we know that they have some things to share with us of their own experience of how they are addressing prejudice within their own experience of life. So what I'd like to do is introduce each member, and when I introduce you, if you would please come up and find a chair. I think we have one too many, so I'm going to lose this one. First, we have Rabbi Joel Fleekop with us from Temple Bethel in Pensacola. Please come on up, Rabbi. I know Rabbi has been part of interfaith experiences before, and I hope he'll share some of that with us so we can learn. Next, we have Minister Emeritus Eddy. Come on up from the Universalist Unitarian Church. Unitarians are well known for their bridge building, so we're very glad that you came tonight. We also have Pastor LuTimothy May. Missionary Church. LuTimothy and I have eaten salt together, a pound of salt together in some challenges with the school here, and we unashamedly claim him as son. And to represent the Baha'i community is Dr. Sandy Frazer, who you all know. So please come up. And finally, sorry that Dr. Evan Horton cannot join us. He had an emergency and he had to email us a little while ago and say he couldn't come. And that we're very sorry that our efforts to have a Muslim representative didn't work this particular function, but we certainly hope that happens in the near future. So our moderator tonight is Mr. Ford Fowles. Ford is a well-loved member of the Regional Baha'i Council of the Baha'is of the Southeast, and he comes to us with a very special, unique skill set of both an integrated and mindful perspective on these issues and some experience. So he's bringing those to our task tonight. I'll hand it over to you.
Good evening, friends.
Good evening.
I may be well loved and have a lot of experience, but they wisely cast me in the role of asking questions instead of answering. So I think that was probably very, very smart on my part. Baha'u'llah says in our writings that we should consort with the followers of all religions, and spirit of concord and amity. And so that's what we're doing tonight. We're consorting. In a very wholesome and godlike way. So I think it's important to keep that in mind. I want to express to the panelists here how joyful we are. And I hope some of that comes through tonight, because this is an injunction. This is part of our faith, is that this is what we're supposed to be doing. And so an opportunity like this should happen much more frequently than they do, and we're very pleased to have it happen here tonight, to be able to spend some time. Because it's consorting in a very wholesome and godlike way that we mentioned earlier, I would like to make sure that people are free to also to do their own participation in some way. We do have microphones set up in the aisles. So as we get warmed up here and as we get going, if you have a question you would like to pose to the panel, and it of course relates to the specific topic at hand, then please feel free to go to the mic. I will recognize you at the most convenient time to do so. And I'd also like to invite the panelists to follow up with each other. So it's not a formal thing, we're really having a conversation. So, and that's, I think would be very fruitful for all of us if we were able to have a conversation tonight, not so much a formal presentation. So Kim mentioned that we have one of the illnesses that afflicts mankind is the illness of prejudice. And this prejudice takes many forms. And the three forms that were mentioned earlier, the three forms that we're going to address in some of the questions this evening, and those have to do with the religious prejudices, gender prejudices, and racial prejudices. And so I would like to just I've got a few questions for prompts, and just see where it goes from there. But I'd like to start really on a very broad basis. The first question I had was, are you and your community already collaborating with other congregations and organizations on ideas on how to address issues of race, gender, and religious prejudice? And if so, what are those types of efforts that are going for that? And so I'm going to throw it way down to the end to Rabbi Fleekop as he takes a sip of his coffee, I guess. Did I catch you at the right time? So if you could just describe maybe some of the things that are going on in your congregation.
Great. Well, thank you for including me in this wonderful gathering and our community as well. I feel that all these efforts are obviously central and key to our religious traditions, and so there's also, this work happens on all sorts of levels. Something as basic, since we're now officially in November, as participating in a downtown, sort of our neighboring congregations. We have a Thanksgiving service each year, which is, I'd say, sort of like the lowest lying fruit of this type of work, which is we all get together and the Tuesday before Thanksgiving and, you know, sing ecumenical songs and be together. But that low foundation sort of builds up to then relationships that last, that transcend the rest of the year, so that I sit with a cohort of clergy, largely Christian clergy, that's the geography of our neighborhood, and learn from each other. Sometimes we talk theology, sometimes we talk how do you deal with difficult congregants. I've heard there aren't any at all in the Baha'i tradition. So that's with low-level things to other works, individually and as a community, sort of being involved in work around LGBT rights, around women's rights, participating in other community building efforts around justice issues. This year we celebrated we had a special Shabbat this summer dedicated to the Freedom Summer, the 50th anniversary of the Freedom Summer. And programs like that, sort of building up on these, and of course working as much as possible in partnership with other communities. Since I'm first, I don't know how long you want me to talk, so I'm going to stop now and let others talk. And elaborate on more detailed programs later.
The Reverend Eddy was just about to give you an elbow. So and maybe we could just work our way down and maybe you can build on that.
I'm tempted to give a long lecture on the nature of Unitarian Universalism or Universalist Unitarianism. Most people say Unitarianism, but we are a combination of two traditions. And in both of these traditions, we share the Baha'i commitment to conversation, cooperation, there must be a third C there somewhere, with other people of different faiths, different communities. We've done this consistently. I think in the area of interfaith collaboration, we can do a great deal more, and we hope to. We chose as our major social action focus for this year, interfaith conversations. And that's why we were so happy to be invited to be a part of this panel. Perhaps we have done best in the area of gender prejudice. We were really pioneers in this field way back in 1969, 70. We produced a curriculum on sexuality for our young people because we found that there were a lot of misunderstandings, not only in the area of homosexuality, but even bisexuality and certainly what's considered normal sexuality, heterosexuality. So we produced a curriculum which recognized the fact that about 10% of the human race are born with a gender identification different from their biological identification. And we've done very well in that field, I think. We've gone to the courts and been on the right side of that issue. At this point, we've succeeded to the point where probably half of our new ministerial candidates are either gay or lesbian. We have a number of transsexual people in our ministry now, or transgender people, to use the terminology they prefer. And I think that area. As for local efforts, we're rather proud, if that's not a sin, of our participation with the Black community here. Martin Luther, we were active in the movement to get rid of the remnants of slavery, the Jim Crow laws. Our congregation was never bombed, or our ministers were never attacked, but congregations, other congregations in the South were, and we have maintained our insistence that the color of a person's skin or their so-called racial identification, and I use that always, race. There is no such thing as race. There's only one race. We're all the human race. We were in the first Martin Luther King celebration. We've been in a number of them since. We have a very colorful float that we met. For a long time, we were the only white congregation in the parade, and we've been joined now by some others. The one area in which I wish we had done more is congregation to congregation, where we had created sibling relationships with predominantly Black congregations, with predominantly, or even Baptists. We've not done that. And that I
That was a great segue. First of all, let me just thank the entire conference for allowing us to be here to have this discussion, very needed discussion as it relates to race, religion, as well as some other areas in gender. I'm a pastor, believe it or not, of a church that's over 80 years old, that have many, many different dynamics that were prejudiced. And what we've done, what we've attempted to do is, number one, allow people to identify with their own prejudices, because every one of us, whether we want them or not, are in environments that formulate our prejudices. And many times, in order for us to reach a level of liberation, we have to start from a premise of truth. And that truth for prejudices, we have to recognize that we all have some prejudices. And so we create an environment by which everyone can see themselves in the mirror for who we really are. And then, after we're free to be exposed to accept my prejudice, then I'm able to now identify with others and not allow my biases to stop me from being unjust to someone. I really believe that the world is an unfair world, but we don't have to be unjust people. You don't know how you didn't have a vote in how you were raised. You didn't have a vote in what home you were brought up in, what culture. But as we become more mature, we then have the choice to decide that regardless of my biases or my prejudices, I want to do something else that will bridge the gap so that we can live cohesively in a great community by which all of us bleed the same color blood, same type of hearts, same type of arteries. And so we have to first free people to, first of all, accept their prejudices and love them, but don't allow them to limit you from now exposing yourself to loving others. So we do that for the church. But then we don't leave them there to accept their prejudice, but now we challenge you to move beyond what your prejudices were to now be more inclusive to your brothers and sisters who may be next door. In our tradition, there was a prejudice against women in ministry. Some practical things that we did, we had to first of all teach that in God, that all of us are equal. You know, that in God, you know, in government, it may not be equal, but in God, in the pay scale, it may not be equal, but in God, all of us are equal. Because I believe in, like my sister said here, and my brother, in a human race. And because God made us all human, we all have equal playing grounds. And so, for the first time in our church history, we licensed our first female minister. Under my small leadership. Right? But we didn't do it just because it was emotional. We did it because I was able to teach that in God, there is no difference between Jew, Greek, Gentile, Protestant, or female or male. And so we have to begin by teaching and giving information and then give practical examples of what this looks like. Because you can teach me, but now I need the practicality of what you're teaching. And so as a leader, I believe that's why this forum is so important, that leaders begin to model what it looks like for reconciliation from our prejudices. And so that's what we've done as it relates to gender, as it relates to race, and denominational. I attended an interdenominational theological center, which it tended to bring denominations together rather than separate them. And so we build upon each other. And gentleman, Dr. Horton, who's going to be here tonight, is the pastor of Brownsville Assembly of God. And we're Baptist churches, and we're in the same neighborhood. The same crime that hit our church hit their church. The same children that need a good education in our church need it in their church. We have so many similarities. And so what we try to do is explain that our differences doesn't mean that we're deficient. We just have different understandings. And so, me being a new kid on the block, I reached out to Dr. Horton, Brownsville Assembly of God, predominantly white congregation, Friendship Missionary Baptist Church, different denomination, predominantly African American, and say, what can we do? And so one of the first things we did was we said, let us talk first. And so we began to talk about all the challenges that we're facing as a community, different issues. And we said, hey, you know what would be a great thing to do? One of the most segregated hours in all the country is the church worship hour, the traditional, 11 o'clock, Sunday morning. Said, why don't we put our congregation together? Wow, that's going to be different. You mean bring our whole congregations that we're going to worship together? You sing this way, we sing this way. You got loud drums and guitars. We got this. How are we going to do this? And we said, we don't know how, but we just got to do it. Because a lot of times we can have these discussions, but if we don't put anything in practice, they're just discussions. And so this year, for Good Friday, and for those who are Christian, who support Jesus and what Jesus did, Good Friday represents the day that the veil was torn in twain. it represents a day that everything that separated us ought to bring us together. So I was invited to bring the message at his church. And so we invited our church, and so we sing together. And so you have a congregation, Brownsville Assembly of God, noted for their revival back in the 90s, that have half of the church is black, half of the church is white, some Hispanic, but we're all mixed in together, worshiping together. That was a big deal because it hadn't been done before. And so we didn't go there with our religious rules, and we didn't go there bleeding on our philosophies. We went there in love, saying, we love each other. That's why we sing together. We sing some songs that they're used to, songs that we're used to. And so that's a practical thing that we've done for some of our race and religious issues. So I really look forward to these types of discussions because I believe if there's going to be some solutions, I believe that the religious or the faith-based communities are going to be the ones who start and chart the path for that. So again, don't want to be too long, but just want to share that little bit on the question. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I'm gonna definitely need that. Thank you. Wow. Thank you, everyone, for coming, and we really appreciate the opportunity to also express some of the views that we have on these topics. And it's just so wonderful to be a part of this panel, so I really appreciate that. And collaboration. We have done quite a lot of collaboration, and looking over the years, I've relied on quite a few people in the audience to help jog my memory. But we had formed an interfaith celebration that existed for about 10 years in the area. And during that time, we participated in Martin Luther King Jr. Parade, commemorative parade that was held in the area. We've also been on planning meetings. Various members have been on planning committee meetings for the Martin Luther King programs, as well as the Native American festivals that have been in our area too. So, and most of the time, the conversations at these meetings have always been, you know, how can we go further? How can we remove, you know, the prejudices? How can we get beyond, you know, just the leadership really talking about it? And we have found that we've had a lot of commonality, and we've also found that, you know, they got along so swimmingly. You know, they just really enjoy being in each other's company. At least, you know, I would get feedback, and I said, well, how was it? Oh, we loved, you know, getting together and talking and you know, talking about what our commonalities are, bringing out some of the differences, and really, you know, just coming to a better understanding of each other. So that has been really joyful, you know, in these gatherings and consultations that we have and discussions that we have. So we hope to do more, and we would love to do more. And it's just really great to hear the examples that I have been hearing. I'm really encouraged by them.
So hearing your reflections, I think one of the things that I could highlight would be this sort of modeling, not just this, I think we all talk about conscious efforts, but sort of what happens unconsciously, and little things like membership forms that say, you know, member 1 and member 2 instead of male member and female member like they used to in different times. But also, one of the unique things about our congregation here is that more than half of our membership, are married to people who aren't Jewish. And so being a community where their non-Jewish partners or spouses feel comfortable, not just dropping perhaps the kids off at Sunday school, but also coming to worship and being part of the community, to have them feel as much a part of the community as they want to. Even if theologically or religiously we're in different places, that we show our respect by warmly embracing them, and they too show their respect, how generous of them to come and sit next to their their husband or their wife or their friend during a worship service, and to be supportive, or to how generous to commit to raising your children in your partner's faith as opposed to your own. Those types of things, and to respect that and to honor that explicitly, but also sort of implicitly with how we model things, not just when we sort of organize programs, but how we model that every day. I think it's really important as well around these issues of race, of gender, of theological or religious differences.
We have that in common too. We have, quite a few Baha'is who their spouse is not Baha'i, and so they have, similar experiences.
Thank you very much. Well, I think we have the right panel, so I'm going to ask some slightly more difficult questions, I think. But this is this is a multi-part question, so you might want to write this down as we go. So actually, each of you touched on something. So each of you touched on something I thought was interesting. In one way or another, you talked about, Rabbi, you said first that this unfolds at different levels. So I'm assuming in my mind, I'm starting to construct what it is that's in your mind. So I'm thinking there's the individual level, there's the one-on-one. We had dinner together, and I had what was that called again that we had?
A knish.
A knish. We shared knishes tonight, so this was good.
They were very good.
They were very good. And then there's the congregational level. You have congregations that Pastor May talked about, so mixing of congregations. And then you have the leadership, and what you see here is you have this mixture of leadership. So I have a multi-part question related to this. So has there been, in any of the things that you've done, be it race or gender or multi-faith, has there been some resistance within your congregations, and how have you handled those? So that would be the first thing. And then, if you look at just the interfaith part of this, there are certain things that congregations or communities can do unilaterally that will help move certain issues forward. But it makes sense that if you band together with other communities, you have greater strength and greater efficacy. So what are some things that you think might be, could be better tackled with an interfaith approach rather than one congregation at a time? So two things: resistance within your congregation. How have you handled that? And of course, we've already ruled out the fact that we have troublesome Baha'is. We know that now, thanks to Pastor May. So we don't have to answer that one. Thank you very much.
Bless you.
Resistance, I want to focus on that.
Okay.
To opening up, making the welcome to everybody wider. If there's any, we talk about having an elevator speech. Somebody says, well, what's a Unitarian Universalist? Usually they say, what do you believe? We have, and one of the things phrases that I use a lot is that we celebrate diversity. We don't have problems with interfaith marriages because each one of us has his own faith, his or her own faith. Our congregation is based not upon a common belief system, but a common set of values. And these values include diversity. And we don't just tolerate diversity, we celebrate diversity. We encourage diversity. We applaud diversity. If you think that's easy, you try it sometime. It's very hard. And there are limits. But as far as belief is concerned, we have people in our congregations who identify with Hindu religion. We have people who identify with Judaism. A lot of people who would say they were Christians, though many Christians would argue with that appellation. But we think we understand how to deal with differences, how to cooperate where our values, not necessarily our beliefs, but our values agree. For example, the Catholic, most of our people are pro-choice. whereas the Catholic Church has taken a different position. And yet, you know, we can cooperate with them. On the peace movement, for example, the attempts to do away with war, and where we can cooperate, that's what we're looking for with other groups. What can we do together? And we don't really worry about the things on which we disagree. One of the things when I was looking over the questions and I sort of wrote out what my answers would be, one of the questions was about unity. I've forgotten what the actual wording was. How do we achieve unity? I don't think we, as congregations of different denomination, different names, should look for unity with other groups. Our separate groups are beautiful. We need this. We need Baha'is. You know, we need Muslim communities. We need Hindu communities and so forth and so on. For people who share these traditions and cherish these traditions. So let's not search for unity. Let's search for cooperation. This question back here.
I just wanted to add a comment that many Baha'is talk about unity through diversity, and that the only way that true unity can be established is if true diversity is preserved. And so...
Right. Yes, you're never going to increase the sense of belonging to some community. You're not going to, the sense that we are human beings, that we have that in common. When you lose that, you end up with things like the Ku Klux Klan, you end up with things like ISIS. And so we must always, whatever our differences that are important to us, we must recognize we are all part of one community. I pre-arranged perhaps.
No, there's no order.
Okay. All right. Good. Chaos.
When we speak of resistance, and then also what do we do to provide that unity, it's amazing. I came from a big family where we were taught, regardless of what our purposes were, we were family. And actually, one of my brothers walked in today. He's a politician, and I'm a preacher. And so we have to remind ourselves that all the time. We're still family. But we've learned that just because we're different don't mean we're deficient, and that we all have value. And so I was afforded the opportunity to teach religion at the University of West Florida, and because at the university I was able to create my own syllabus and what I would like to teach and get it to the dean, and they approved it, that I taught from an appreciation perspective. That when you come in, you have these high energy college students coming in with all of their biases and prejudices, but they're there really to reach out to formulate some type of ideology for themselves. And so I discovered through teaching Hinduism, Buddhism, Catholicism, Protestantism, all these isms, and Baha'i, and others, that many of us, when we look at core values, we're really alike. We really have more similarities than differences. So as we talk about resistance and the Muslim, and I wish one of our Nation of Islam brothers or sisters could have been here. There was a challenge that I had personally some years ago. I had to deal with a president of the United States who was considered a Muslim, and that was the sound bites of every commercial, making him scary because of his religious preference. That was not his, but it's still, if it would have been, that was his prerogative if he would have been Muslim. And so it was a scare tactic to scare people away, especially Christians or any other faith group. Muslims are scary. And so his pastor, who was Jeremiah Wright at the time of Trinity, Chicago, is a gentleman that I got a chance to work with who speaks over 7 or 8 languages, who is one of the most bright gentlemen that you'll ever meet. He's very smart. And I worked under him when I was in Atlanta with the Senator Wood Proctor's conference. And I shared with him a while ago that I wanted him to come to the church. And so it was during that presidential era that he decided to come to our church. And I was like, wow, how does this work? You know, $11 million was spent on him by Fox News in 24 hours. And so he was on every station trying to, and I'll never forget, he told me that his daughters were in college and he had to remove them from college just because of the attacks on this pastor of a Christian church, of association with him, the president, who was painted as Muslim. And he told his daughters, he said, you can just tell your friends that your father's the $11 million man. But I got all kinds of calls when people found out that he was coming to our church, saying, don't bring him to Pensacola, don't you know what's going to do to your congregation, what it's going to do to your reputation. He's scary, don't touch him. And see, everything that everyone else was talking about, I didn't have that reality. My reality was, this is an older man, reminds me of my dad or grandfather, who had children and grandchildren, who was as smart as a whip. And so we had to make a conscious effort, and my family helped me make that effort, that, you know, we don't want to retract the invitation because of other people's religious scares. And unfortunately, a lot of the Christian faith was scared away from me. But I got a call from a Muslim, Nation of Islam, who said, Reverend May, if you'll allow us, we want to help you out with Jeremiah Wright. And I said, wow. And so I met with one of the brethren of Islamic faith, and he says, wherever Jeremiah Wright goes, we go to support because of his relationship with the Nation of Islam. And they said, because our challenges are bigger than religion. And they told me, they said, Louis Farrakhan called us and said that if Jeremiah Wright's Pensacola, the Nation of Islam, got to be there. So now I got Jeremiah Wright coming to the church. I have the Nation of Islam. I have the Nation of Islam saying that we want to come help out in the church service. And I'm Protestant, you know, and I'm Baptist, and I'm only been pastoring 3 years. I said, okay, I'm going to get fired this weekend. And so you have about 50 men in all black saying that we want to come in and we want to usher, we want to come and protect, because he had death threats on his life. And so here I am, I said, how's this going to work? They're going to come in our church in all these black suits and with these bow ties, and how am I going to explain to the mother's ministry all these black men with these bow ties with their Quran, and we have a Bible and a hymn book. How am I going to do this? And so quickly I had to teach and share that regardless of our religion, look at our hearts. And so the resistance was there. I mean, news was there. News camera was outside. We had to tell them they couldn't come on the inside. Was painted as a bad pastor or preacher. But there's something, my father said, that you need to stand up for something. And if your conviction leads you to do what's just and right, stand up for it if you're the only person standing. And so it's risky standing up for reconciliation of religions, because your peers and your constituency sometimes don't understand that level of understanding that you may have. But in order for us to move forward, it's going to take a few of us saying, let us take a stand as it relates to reconciliation of race, religion, and gender. And that's why I like this panel so much. So that's what we did. And you know what, after it was over, our church was still standing. Some of the members in the resistance was some of the church didn't attend. They were scared, they were fearful. But we went ahead anyway, and we prayed to the Creator, our God, that God is about you. Something the Baha'is believed in earlier, that we all emerged from the same source. There wasn't a different set of human anatomy God got. I mean, He made humankind. And so I find out 8 years later, or 5 years later, that I'm still the pastor. But then there was a great appreciation from those who said, thank you, Pastor, for taking a risk. Because those people didn't bite us. Those people didn't hurt us. As a matter of fact, they're nicer than some of our own congregation. and so that was one of the resistance, but also as it relates to women, and I said in ministry, you know, it's not the most accepted thing to have women in Protestant churches, Special Baptists or Southern Baptists. It's the same thing. Do you know what you're doing? Do you know what you're doing by allowing women to get in that pulpit? Well, first of all, the pulpit doesn't belong to us. God created me, I didn't create God. And so many times if we force people back to their own conversation, when we say God is able to do anything. And so if God can do anything, that means we have to untie God's hand. That means God can use women, God can use children, God can use people of other races. God can do whatever because God is just that powerful. And so we push people to the theological question, is God really the God that we claim God to be? And if God is that creator God, then we have to allow God to not be manipulated by our own strengths and our own biases. And when God becomes God in our lives, we allow that to happen, even if it's tough and even if it's rough for us. And so I believe as a community, what we can do is begin these conversations of having maybe teams together where we can come periodically so that we can share and so we can be less afraid of each other. And then once leaders are less afraid of each other, then our congregations and communities are less afraid of each other.
I just have a question. What were the dates Jeremiah Wright was here?
It must have been 2000, was election year 2008? That year.
Could I have you come to the podium? Oh, yeah. To the microphone, please, so we can hear you.
It's just going to be a comment rather than a question, but just like today we had that workshop and we talked about getting out of our comfort zone. And that way we are sort of be persistent with that resistance. And I think through that we are becoming more liberating. And I applaud you for your efforts to overcome that.
So fair to say that you got out of your comfort zone? So let me move on to another question, and then and this is a little bit of a left turn, so forgive me, but I do think this is important. For those academics who track these sorts of things, it would appear that our society in general is becoming more secular. So church attendance is down, those people who identify with a specific religion or denomination is falling, those people who identify, we even have an appellation now, SBNR, believe, spiritual but not religious, that sort of, so this is a thing now. So, which is, you know, no editorial comment on that, but it does call into question an interesting thing, which the Baha'ism themselves have been focusing on. And this is the opportunities that the youthful members of our community provide for us in terms of specifically as it relates to these particular prejudices. How are they viewed in the generation one or two behind me? What are the opportunities there? And do you have specific programs that maybe bring that energy or that outlook into what it is you're trying to accomplish? So.
Well, I think one of the challenges is when people, especially young people, decide that they're not religious. Some of what they're rejecting, right? So often, like a lot of us, unfortunately, so many of us stopped thinking about theology when we were in, third or fourth grade. And so that's, no matter where we are in life, we're still thinking about religion that way. But a lot of young people, when they're leaving religion, what they think that they're leaving behind is this history of prejudice, of intolerance, of gender and racial discrimination, whether or not that's actually part of their faith tradition or not, but that they see often, especially in the media, sort of religion represented maybe monolithically. This is the religious side of the argument, and this is the non-religious side of the argument. And if they agree with the non-religious side of the argument, then that's got to be their, then they're not religious. Before coming to Pensacola, I was in the San Francisco Bay Area for 7 years. Also during 2008, which was not only a presidential election, but in California, when Proposition 8 was on the ballot. And it was really important for me and for my congregation to be active in that campaign, in part because there appeared to be a religious side of that debate, but that didn't reflect our values, and it certainly didn't reflect the values of our young people in our congregation. And to surrender, and some of us may or may not agree with that particular stance on that issue, but in general, on any issue, when we let religion and politics in your family especially are intertwined or closely aligned, but they are in the debate as well. And so I feel like if we're going to maintain the importance or the role of religion, it's not just a theological argument, but it is a social justice calling. It's about affirming, in Hebrew, B'Tselem Elohim, that everyone is created in the image of God, and acting upon that in a very proactive way, so that, you know, the hymns of whatever tradition people grew up with, or the songs, you know, those sound dated. You know, whatever's modern now is going to sound dated in 30 years. You know, no matter how edgy your music is or how non-edgy it is, you know, whether we're talking about a rock band or an organ or what have you. But those values, that's what's enduring. And so we have to express those values in the public square, I think, to make religion enduring with young people.
Frazer?
Well, I was, Well, I was just thinking about the young people and how we're always looking for more young people in our communities, particularly because they have so much energy and they have a lot of good ideas. They can do, you know, pretty much everything that we do, because we don't really have clergy in our faith community. But they're very key in the community building part, a piece of our organization or religion. We do a lot of community building. In fact, that's our whole focus. Everything that we're doing is to build capacity, not just as individuals, but as families, as communities, you know, in our Baha'i community and in the greater community. And we need help doing that. We need the help of the young people. We need the help of every person in our community, but also people who aren't in our community. We need a lot of help to bring forth this vision that we have, this world-embracing vision that we have, with eradicating all of the different isms out there that we have to overcome. And so we need a lot of help with it. And we do have community building programs. You know, we have children's classes, we have study circles, we have devotionals, and we have junior youth groups. And we particularly need people to help us with those things. And they aren't just for the Baha'is, they're for the whole world. The things that we have are for everyone. And so just trying to get that message out there to the young people and to everybody, I think is important. So, and I think we do have very similar situations. It's very hard to keep our young people engaged. We want to keep them engaged, you know, it's an interesting concept to think about having an interfaith younger panel, you know, to see what they would have to say about certain things. But we have that same struggle with how do we keep our young people engaged and you know, and helping them find their path of service. Because for us, it's all about service, you know, and how we change the world into what we, this vision that we have. So I better listen more, maybe I'll get some more ideas.
I think the point I'd like to make is that young people always want to be out. They want to be out of whatever their parents' generation is in. And so, you know, they're going to leave, but they're going to come back, many of them, when they have children, and realize that the values that their parents had and that they have are important. They may not join your congregation, but they're out there doing things. But I only have one grandson, and he's almost incomprehensible. He's 22. But I also have some great nephews and nieces who are in 16 and 17 and 18, and I follow them pretty closely in what they believe. And I'm amazed at how closely their value system reflects my own value system. I'm 84, and yet what we were talking about, when I was a part of this, yeah, I know. I can show you I used to get carded every time I wanted it. When I was 30, I had to get my teenage friends to vouch for me that I was 80. But it's a misfortune, but I bear it. You want to see my license? All right, yes, I'm telling the truth. I know. But just choose the right grandparents, and the same thing will happen to you. Young people. I think the value systems of young people today are much, much higher than they ever were. I was a wannabe hippie. I was a 30-year-old wannabe hippie and a minister of a church, and so I was defending all the people. One of my sermons was, "This is safe to be young," and I was out there, defending them for wearing their hair long and so forth, getting into trouble in school by boycotting because of the war and so forth. All these things. So we may not recognize that our young people who left the church or the synagogue or the temple as being religious, but they're being religious in their rebellious way. So I have great optimism about our younger generation.
I'd just like to make a comment on that. I think a mistake that many parents make is that they expect their children to accept tradition completely. And when they leave at that age to explore and to learn on their own, they're rejected. And it makes coming back very difficult. And I see this many, many times. I've seen that happen. And a large measure of patience is required, and the belief that what you've taught them is solid and true.
Great. Well, youth is, and I appreciate what you said. It was very true. Young people get pushed out, and then we don't even know how to come back because of the way that our experience was. I have a lot of experience with being accepted as a youth. For so long, I was an adult. I had to show my license to even drive. I have two children, one 12 years old and one 11. You don't believe I have a son getting ready to go to high school in a couple of years. And so, well, my drinking, well, he's drinking, I'm drinking whatever he's drinking. And so, youth in this generation, I believe that, especially in religion, we don't value what youth can bring to the life of any of our organizations. I believe they have so much to offer, but I don't believe we've done a great job at listening. There are some sacred writings, especially in the Christian faith, that are very emphatic when it says it will be the children that turn the hearts of the parents. It will be the daughters who change the hearts of the mothers. It will be the sons that change the hearts of the fathers. So you see that there is there's a principle in listening to the youth, especially if you want to survive. And many religious circles are dying. They are barely making it. And one of the reasons is because when you see no youth, you can already put your own gravesite out. You can't make it without the youth. And so what we have to do is push ourselves and make ourselves as adults in our traditional way of thinking We have to move outside the box to allow youth and young people to be accepted in the imago Dei, the image of God. We got to let young people know that they are the image of God right where they are. And as difficult as that may be, because they're a different generation, we have to, if we want to successfully reach them, we can't reach them where we are. We have to reach them where they are. And if no one, whether young or old, want to hear how to be corrected until I know that I'm being loved. And so we have to love our youth right where they are, with their earrings, with their tattoos, with their crazy way of thinking, because that's just how God loved us, the way that we were. And if you want me to be what you want me to be, you got to love me where I am. Because if you don't love me where I am, there's no chance that you can ever get me to where you think I could be. And so I believe in many of our religious circles and settings, we, as tough as it is, and as parents, we may have to go in the room and cry, but we have to say, I love you, child, just for the image of God that you are. Not your behaviors, not your characteristics, and we have to move that out of the way. This past week I was in Orlando, and I had to speak to a group of youth, and a young lady who had grown up in a religious setting, and she said, I got kicked out of the church because I had a tattoo. She loved God, she had talent, but she had a tattoo, and the church members bashed her. Said, you're going to hell, you know, and that's something to tell a young person, especially if I'm already living in hell, when you tell me I'm going to hell. Because there's a lot of people, and a lot of young people are already living in hell, so they don't need to be told they're going to hell. And so as I continued to talk, and I was in my suit, and I was sharing, and she started weeping and crying, and I said, I don't know who told you that, but if you're going to hell, save a seat for me because I'm on my way. And I began to roll up my sleeve, and I showed her my tattoo, and she broke down. And she said, can God use me? I said, if God can use me, and I showed her my tattoo, and my point is, we got to let young people know, maybe we didn't do what you did, but we did something. We may not have a tattoo, but we have something in our closet that nobody else knows about but God. And if God loved us right where we were, we have to have the patience. We have to have the tolerance to say, I love you, regardless of what you do. And when we embrace young people, they'll come in, they're energetic. But we're getting older, we're tired. We can't even, we're tired, we're worn out. They have more creativity in their thought patterns, and they can help us more than we know. And so what we've learned to do, matter of fact, 2 weeks ago, I was talking to some members of the church, and I said, why did you come to Friendship? Because we do a new membership class, and I said, how did you get here? And 3 ladies told me, said, the reason I'm here, to be honest with you, is not because you can preach or you're a good preacher. The reason I'm here is because my young people, my children, got me out of bed and said, I want to go to that church. So I said, wow. I thought it was something else. I thought y'all liked the church. I said, nah, really, it's okay. But the young people said, Mom, I want to go to church. And parents say, how can I tell my child not to go pray? And so this is the place my children wanted to come, so here I am. And my point being, if we understand the value and don't do it just for the sake of saying, I appreciate your value, listen to what they have to say. Most of the things that have changed our church have come from the young people. From the technology, from our mobile app, everything that has happened that has scared the older people of the church. They say, I don't have a cell phone. I said, but we're dealing with a generation that was born in technology. Ultrasounds now are 4D. You can tell what a child looks like, their eyes, their nose, and our children is in that environment. It's a hip-hop generation, and what I like about the music that they listen to, even though I don't listen to it, that's a mechanism that brings white kids, black children, Jew children, all of them are downloading iTunes. They're downloading iTunes. And so the model that was here from the beginning of time, when you put a Jewish child, a Baptist child, a Protestant child inside of a cradle, no matter who's hungry, they're all going to drink out of that same bottle. Why? Because they don't know any different than to love each other. And we have a hip-hop generation, and these kids, they don't care who gives them that Beyonce CD. They just want Beyonce. And I know most of you know who Beyonce is. How would you know who Beyonce is? You got a grandchild, you got a child, you got a PlayStation. Anybody know what a PlayStation is? Or a PLS? I mean, you're going to look. Raise your hand again. Yes, sir. I like that panelist. And so I have a son maybe your age. I have to get into the PlayStation world, even though I don't like it. But if I know that's the language of the young people, they light up when I say PlayStation, just like he did. He was about to fall asleep when I said PlayStation. He's like, yeah! And so when we enter their world and to let them know that God loves them, right? The PlayStation kids. And so what we have at the church upstairs, we have a PlayStation. So at Bible study, the kids, after we give them a little Bible, we give them a little PlayStation. You know what? They want to come because of the PlayStation. Maybe not because of the Bible, but eventually they'll understand that my church loved me enough to get us a PlayStation. Maybe I'll listen to what they have to say about my grades in school. And so those are just some of the things we try to do. Thank you, brother.
Yeah, question here and then Lisa.
I just wanted to say, look, I think that human nature is fairly synonymous with servitude. I used to teach kindergarten. I never met a 5-year-old that didn't want to be my helper for the day.
Right.
And they come in and they go, can I be your helper today? And so I was thinking, I think patience is one of the things that we probably lack a lot in terms of trying to train our children. If a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old wants to set the table, we shove them out of the way and say, oh, no, you're going to break something.
Yeah.
Let them set the table. Let them carry the thing of water or whatever to the kids. Help them. Let them do it. I think we're so impatient. We want to just get things done quickly. We want to get it done right. And we don't want the little ones to do it because they just don't do it fast enough or they don't do it right enough or they're going to break something or they're going to spill something. But it starts that young. And when we tell them, no, I don't want you to help me, I don't want you to serve me, what you're showing them is that as far as they're concerned, their service isn't even important. So I just kind of thought with what you said, and I know you used to teach kindergarten too, so it was this sort of beautiful thing, and then what you said as well, as far as it just kind of tied that in. I think patience, regardless of what faith you belong to or you know, adhere to or even believe in, or no faith at all, I think it's a huge virtue that most of us are kind of missing. And I think it starts very, very young because these kids pay attention. By the time they're 3 years old, they want to do everything. I mean, how many of you have kids that are 3 or 4 that want to get the vacuum cleaner out? They want to vacuum. Let them vacuum. They're not going to do it very well. Later when they're gone, you're going to have to do it again. It's okay. Let them do it. Let them serve. Let them serve us. You know, let them serve each other. So that's all I really wanted to say. Thank you all so much for being here. It's fantastic. It's wonderful.
I want to share what happened last year in Atlanta, because we were one of the cities that hosted a youth conference, and there was like 800 young people. Now, young people, I think they said from ages 16 to
15 to 30.
Yeah, 30. But to see that many young people in one place, I was really amazed and impressed at the maturity. That I had this idea of what our children and young people have been like all these years, that really I had my own limitations in my mind of what they can do. But to have seen them gather together and do a conference where they were studying, I mean, they were in their sessions all day, like for 3 days, I think, was amazing to me. I did not realize how much really that they were able to do and wanted to do. So for me, it's, I mean, I work with children forever, really, different ages. It's getting younger and younger with Pastor May's school there. But for me, I have to really be, again, open to what it is, the possibilities of the youth today, because to me, they've gone to another level as well. You know, so to me, to provide the opportunities for them to get together, to share, and to support each other, I think is key. And I know that in some areas you don't have as many of the youth there, but I used to go, when I lived in Birmingham, I would visit Atlanta and take some of our kids there. So there's more really opportunities that we are aware of. It's just we need to know how to do that. But I just want to share how proud I am to have witnessed the Baha'i youth. And it wasn't even just all Baha'is, they brought their friends, and it was really in the spirit of learning how to be of service to the world. So that was really impressive for me. I wanted to share that with you because I know not everybody had an opportunity to do that. And before we came down this time, they also just recently had reunion of the youth in the area, and I thought it was just gonna be like 30 young people. There was like 100 kids that attended a 3-day workshop. So it's really, there's a commitment there that I think we have to be aware of so that we can help in creating more opportunities for them to be of service. So that's all I want to say.
I would earlier, Pastor May mentioned being from a big family, from I'm one of 4, so it's sort of a big family. And one of the advantages of that is that sort of the older people, my older sisters, fought a lot of battles for me that I didn't have to fight. And so when I reached certain life stages growing up, that there was already an answer, and I didn't have to go through those struggles. And I think when we think of our young people, in part because of the battles that so many of you and we have fought, in part because they're young, when we talk about especially these issues around religious tolerance, around gender equality, around racial prejudice, I'm blessed to live with a 6- and 3-year-old, and so much they just don't see those things. That their worldview is, I think, where we'd love to be. That you're referencing. They go to the playground, they just play with whoever's there. They don't think about it. Nobody says, "Well, are they from my neighborhood?" or "Do they believe what?" Right? Just right. None of that matters, right? We're talking about overlapping. You mentioned a quote about learning from the young people. So I want to share. In Jewish tradition, there's this teaching that blessed is the generation whose children listen to the elders, and doubly blessed is the generation whose elders listen to the children. And that there's so much that we can learn from them, especially on these 3 areas of focus for this weekend by letting our young people lead, because they don't have call it baggage or the history or even just the different things that color our worldview and maybe color it and blind us in different ways.
This gentleman over here.
Baha'i faith, we are taught that man is a mind rich in gems of inestimable value. Education can alone cause it to reveal its treasures and enable mankind to benefit therefrom. And in the Baha'i faith, when we talk about education, Abdul Baha says that what we receive in the schools is not true education, it's instruction. Animals do the same thing to the kids. They can instruct them how to hunt and so on and so forth. He says what we need is true education, and that consists of 3 things: love, manners, and politeness. And Abdul Baha tells us that these things have to be done by the time the child is age 5. After that, we are in the details.
So I want to be mindful of our time this evening, and I have one last question I'd like to throw out. I think one of you mentioned earlier that this is great, but it should not end simply with conversation. And so I'd like to ask, are there specific things that you would like to see next? Are there things that informally or formally could be pursued, interfaith, to maybe continue to address these issues of religious or gender or racial prejudices? I don't know, I'm not from this area, so I don't know if there is a formal interfaith panel. I don't know if that could be developed, if that would be wise to do, if it would be helpful. Beyond that, are there other activities? I know that there are efforts for collective worship, for example, where people from various religious backgrounds, who are essentially praying to the same God, can come together, things like that. So I'm wondering, if you had a short wish list of 1 or 2 things, what would you like to see happen that hasn't happened yet?
Well, Rabbi mentioned that the downtown congregation, several downtown congregations have a joint Thanksgiving service. I'd like you to invite everybody else to come to that, because it is the one thing where all people of all religious identifications celebrate together in different ways. And it's a wonderful opportunity. We ought to be able to fill that stadium that we spent so much money building out on the bay. And I'd also like to see this this gang go on a road show. We may be just talking the talk, but by the fact that we're doing it together, we're walking the walk. And I'd like to see us set up some training areas for something that we used to call flying squadrons back when I was a Methodist youth, where people go out, on the station, of course, but invited invitations, where we invite them to invite us, and say, look, we're very different. We're very different people here. We have different bases, but we share values, and we're focusing on the values, and the value we focus on most is that we're all God's children. Amen.
I agree. I would love to see this. Maybe not go on the road, but maybe on the road that's where he gets his drink from. So I need to go with him.
Just a very quick comment, because it's really, he brought something so crucial, so important about going on the road and all these things. Imagine if your group will go to high schools and in just a few minutes and share, because all these young generations, they fear you guys, the elders, because they think you are the ones, the source of prejudices and hatred and separations and divisions and all these things. So they have nothing to do with it. But when they see you and together, standing in the same auditorium, in the same school, talking to the youth, look, here we are together, we are not killing one another. We really respect one another, and we share values, and these are our common values. Tell them those common values. Can you imagine what inspiration would be to the youth, to the young generation, to see it coming from adults? They need that desperately, really desperately.
I agree, and I'm open to it. We can go on the road trip and we can do it locally.
Come to Georgia.
We'll come to Georgia. As a matter of fact, I'm so thankful for the Baha'i committee, the group, and definitely my mom, Kim, the Queen, and her husband, but more so her.
We all feel the same way.
Because I know this has been something that's been in her heart and her spirit for a long time, just to begin this discussion. I mean, literally years now, she and I have had conversation, because we know we need to have more conversation with other groups so that we can do exactly what you're suggesting. When young people and older people of different persuasions, they can see us have a discussion, and we're not fighting, but we're really talking about ways of remedying our communities. It does something. It sends a message out that everybody are not as divisive as the media portrays, and our religions are not scarce, or they're not anything to be fearful of. They're just different. And once we teach them, I believe, more tolerance with violence and gun shooting, and when we see that, this is really my sister, this is really my brother. And so I'm open to that. But I also want to see more other groups out there become part of the discussion. Some Muslim groups, some Buddhist groups out there. But this is a great start. But I would love the opportunity to continue to work to try to get other groups to come in. But this is amazing. I was very intimidated, a little fearful when I was invited. I was going to come, but to be a panelist, I was a little intimidated. But I'm so thankful and so grateful. Because there are not many environments that I am able to just talk like this without someone saying, get him out of here. He's not a real Baptist, he's not a real Protestant, he's not a real Christian. What is he? And so I've shared, I said, I'm a little everything, and when we teach, I'm a little Jewish, I do my little Jewish jokes. I said, Jesus was a Jew, and if you go back to Abraham and go look where we really came from, you'll find out we all really come from the same place. I said, I'm Catholic. I understand if Martin Luther wasn't here, we'd all still be Catholic. So I got a little Lutheran in me. I went to Lutheran college. I got a lot of behind in me. I've been adopted and they injected the blood in me. So, so my point is, who I really am is not my religion. It's what my heart is and my convictions are. And so you cannot box any one of us in. You should not based on religion, because God is greater than religion. Religion is too small for God. And so at the end of the day, I'm God's child. And God has many children all over the world. And I identify with them because when my spirit connects with their spirit, immediately we know that I don't need to talk about your church. I know you're my brother. I know you're my sister. Why? Because our spirits have been knitted together. And once we realize that we allow our spirits to connect instead of our denominations, we'll be able to move forward at a much greater speed than we have in the past. And so I'm thankful again for this night, this evening. And Mr. McQueen, I thank God for him as well. My father passed away a while ago, and so I adopted him. Isn't that strange? And so they allowed me to call him Mom and Pa. But again, and to the Rabbi, he said he had a big family, and I was getting ready to hear him say a big number. He said 4. I was like, oh my God. It's a minimum, but so when you're talking about big, he said 4. I know that may be big to you, but 4 to us, that was nothing. That's like a kid's meal nugget, 4-piece nugget. You go to Chick-fil-A, you have to get a number 5 kill count to get my family. But nevertheless, again, thank you so much, and I look forward to moving forward with this group.
So I echo what they both said. So my mother always used to joke. So I was born in the Philadelphia area and raised out west in Nevada. It's much more normal than you think, actually. But she would always joke, suburban Philadelphia, and she always would joke that, we looked out of place, where the average was like 2.1 fat children or whatever. So we moved out west and predominantly Catholic and Mormon neighborhood, and then we fit right in, actually very small. I think the conversation is really important, but I think what I would love to see, and what I feel is missing here in Pensacola, and I imagine in many of the communities from where you all are from as well, is that partnership around issues. During and that first requires an understanding that we're not going to agree on everything. That there is certain things that I'm going to work with, one congregation with, or a collection of congregations with, and there's another group that we're going to disagree on other things, and there's another group of congregations that we could work on with other things, and we each have a spectrum here. But again, during my time in California, the congregation I was with, we did a lot of they call it community organizing. I know that's maybe a term with some baggage or loaded words, but we figured out what the things were that our community or our congregation cared about, and we worked to improve those. Some of that, was around things like transportation for seniors, but some of that was around things like better schools or, different types of immigration issues and so forth. And I had the privilege of, across town in East San Jose, there was a Most Holy Trinity Catholic Church. It's this huge place. And any given Sunday, and we used to do a health fair for them, they'd have 6,000 people go through that church. They did Mass in no less than 7 languages each Sunday. Congregants from all over, from Vietnam to Central America, all over. And so I went and I spoke on, gave a benediction on an action, is what they called it, around immigration reform. And I shared my family's story. And now for most of these people, predominantly immigrants, predominantly from countries without really large Jewish communities, a lot of people came up to me and told me afterwards that I was the first Jewish person they had ever met. Which is kind of surprising. But that they should meet me in the context of us working on an issue that we care about. That eliminated whatever prejudices they might have heard or picked up through the media or through whatever tradition. And I think if we can work together on those issues that we care about, yes, having theological discussions are great, but working together to strengthen the schools in our neighborhoods, or around living wage issues, or whatever those things are that we can agree upon, seeing us working together across religious lines, across racial lines, across all sorts of economic or other lines that sort of divide our community, or we think divide our community, that's going to have probably a more profound, or as profound, if not more profound, influence than having a nice conversation. But if we can really make a difference in people's lives and see that partnership come together, you know, I've only been here for 2 years, and I'm sure that efforts have been tried and that there may be efforts underway, but I'd love to see that expanded here, and I think in all of our communities. That, and we spoke about like the role of faith, or the faith voice around social justice issues, and having that voice be polyvocal, having it reflect different traditions, I think is really important.
I just want to add that I think that this is a great beginning, and we would love to continue it, particularly the friends in Baja and in Pensacola. And I know I've come from other communities where they had like kind of an interfaith concert. You know, they had an interfaith musical concert, and they've had discussions about like we had. I'm really a product of something that was in a different area called the Baha'i Institute for Race Unity. And it was a place where they had different presentations going on, really getting to know each other and becoming friends, and understanding what some issues were, who could present on these various subjects, and try to, bring together like minds on it. So we would love to have an ongoing conversation about it, and hopefully have something that would come out of a consultation on it that we could be doing on a regular basis. So that we can continue the ties and the start that we have. So we definitely welcome that.
Message from Bonnie.
If I can say one more thing. Many of you are not from Pensacola, and so I would urge you, wherever you are, to try to reproduce what's happened here tonight in your own community. This is a way to talk the talk and walk the walk at the same time. Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting us.
I would just like to say how much we appreciate each one of you has a marvelous personality. I've been to several panels of many different religions, and you guys are working very well together as well, which to me tells me that we can work together to find out, there's a lot of wisdom in all of the religions, and as a Baha'i for a long time, we have been working to try to unite the world. Basically, you are doing the same thing, but you have some wisdom that you could share with us, and we have some wisdom that we can share with you, and we intermingle. We're fighting against the world right now. It seems like the world is in travail, and its agitation waxeth day by day. All of us need to work together and love one another, and each one of you is invited for dinner.
So I would like to thank Rabbi Fleekop and Pastor May and Reverend Eddy and Dr. Frazer for their time this evening. It has been a tremendous thing for us to be able to enjoy your presence here tonight and to benefit from your wisdom. And really, it's inspirational. It's a wonderful thing to be able to sit up here. I think, to a large extent, some of us have said it. It's an achievement to be here at this table together. So whatever happens next is achievement upon achievement, light upon light. Thank you very much. I would like to be the first to stand and to give you an ovation. And thank you to our audience.
Thank you, Ford, for your moderating. Ford,
There you are. Okay.
thank you for moderating us tonight. You're doing a masterful job, and we really appreciate it. Thank you. And before our guests leave, I understand the committee has a gift for each of you, and Sue Dixon is going to come and present you with something to remember us by.
Thank you so much. And I do have a link for each one of you. Fleekop, which is located the symbol of all the religions together.
We get it as part of the program. What comes next is some talent, the hidden talents of this group is going to be performed for us. And I know Lady Nash is going to sing and play for us again. We need to break down the stage in order to do so, so I invite you to do as you will for about 10 or 15 minutes. So let's take our hand once more and we'll see you.
Next. Thank you for joining. You guys
I'm so excited.
And all the bye-bye is fitting. Is there any wherever of difficulty? Say God, say praise be God, say praise be God. He is God, all are His servants. And all the bye-bye is fitting. Is there any wherever of difficulty? Say God, say praise be God, say praise be God. He is God, all are His servants, and all the bye-bye is fitting. There can be no doubt whatever that the peoples of the world of whatever race or religion derive their inspiration from one heavenly source and are subjects of one God. Praise the light of God most bright, Yahweh. Praise the light of God most bright, Yahweh. He is the praise the light of God most bright, that's Yahweh. And He knows the light of God most bright, Yahweh. Praise the light of God most bright, Yahweh. Praise the light of God most bright.